Great. Well, Peter, welcome on the show. Thanks for taking the time to join us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Hey, I was hoping that, we've had a time to chat, but I was hoping that maybe you could do a quick intro, maybe a fun fact as well, if you could, about yourself.
Sure. Peter Jensen. I live here in San Francisco. Been here for 25 years, originally from Denmark. I don't know if it's a fun fact or not. I love to sail here on the San Francisco Bay. That's one new hobby I've taken up, and I love being on the water.
Amazing. That's fantastic. Yeah, the Bay is definitely a good spot for that. And Peter, you are CEO of RocketFuel. Is that right?
That is right.
Awesome. Yeah, and you have a lot of mileage on your belt in the tech industry, don't you?
Yeah, I've been doing this for a while. I love being here in the Silicon Valley where, every 5 years there's a new technology, and the challenge is how do we take that technology and figure out where it applies best, build companies around it, raise money, build the companies up, sell them, and return money to our shareholders and investors.
Amazing. Awesome. So what's your journey getting here to Rocket Fuel? How long have you been in business and how did you end here?
Yeah, so Rocket Fuel is about 5 years old. And as with many of these jobs, it is just your network. You meet people. And in this situation, it was a friend of mine, old friend of mine, actually from high school, that made an introduction and said, "Wow, Peter, you just sold your last company to IBM. Are you available?" And then because I have this other gentleman that has an idea about a new company around payments and blockchain and crypto, and he believes that's going to be the future of payments. Would you like to join? And here we are.
Amazing. The encounter that changed it all. That's awesome. So tell us a little bit for folks who are not very familiar with Rocket Fuel. What do you offer? So you mentioned blockchain and payments. What are your core products?
Yeah. So the vision behind the company is that the blockchain technology, the foundation, and the cryptocurrencies, whether they be stablecoins or bitcoins or XRP or something else, they have the potential to revolutionize, and they are now revolutionizing the way money is moved from A to B. So that's the foundation. And then you can say there are many different use cases. There are many different types of payments. And so we started with one and it's expanded. So let me just summarize it, right? The first solution or use case product we came out with was or what we call our pay in product. So any merchant can now accept payment either in store or online in stablecoins or cryptocurrencies. So if you're selling shoes online and they're $200, somebody wants to pay with stablecoin or crypto, they can do that and they get settled in dollars or euros or wherever they're located in fiat. So that was our first product. And then the next product is an invoicing product where a lot of people, businesses primarily, we're B2B company, they send an invoice. Let's say they're in the US and they have a customer in Mexico, right? And they send an invoice to them. And today the customer wants to, the way they paid the $75,000 invoices, they do a bank transfer. That is becoming more and more complicated with cross-border transfers. And so it is so much easier for them to just pay with crypto, usually stable coins, right? So they just take $75,000 instead of it going through the banks, and the bank is closed on the weekends, and also you have to fill out paperwork depending on which country you're in. You can just send it via stable coins and it's done in 5 minutes, right? So the experience for the customer is like in the old days, you had to mail a letter with the postal service 3 days,
Yeah.
right? And then,
Hmm.
I can just send an email. Or it's the same thing here. It's Friday, you want to pay your invoice. Well, they won't get it until Monday, 3 days later, or you can send it via stablecoin. So that's the invoicing product, second product. The third one is what we call a mass payout product. So it really allows merchants to send out payments to hundreds or thousands of their people. It could be a payroll service. It could be Airbnb. It could be many businesses that need to pay out to a lot of people. And today they do it with bank transfer. And let's say they pay all over the world. Again, if you're Airbnb and you have to pay the homeowners because somebody rented your house and you do 1,000 of those every week, well, again, it's complicated to send those funds via bank transfers. And more of the homeowners are saying, can't you just pay me in stablecoin on or crypto? And then the last thing is a gift card product where we issue gift cards on the blockchain that can be redeemed within our ecosystem. So today we have 4 different products, and it's a little bit like the early days with the internet, where you have the foundation of the technology. Now it's a matter of how each different use case that you can build. And I always use the example that Facebook was built, 10 years after the internet came out. So in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to see lots of new applications and use cases built on top of blockchain and crypto technologies.
Pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And just to kind of double click onto something you mentioned there. So as a merchant, what's the really benefit for me from a revenue perspective to say to pay my vendors invoices in stable coins or leveraging your product?
Well, in general, the benefit overall using blockchain and crypto technologies for payments is it's faster, it's cheaper, it's safer, right? So, but then, for example, if you look at it from a merchant's perspective, why would I want to accept cryptocurrencies on my website or in the store? Well, a couple of reasons. A, I get access to a group of customers that will only buy if they can pay with crypto. We had an example of an art gallery down in Los Angeles, and they called me up and said, we have a customer, he wants to buy this painting, but he wants to pay with Bitcoin. And, it's like people have American Express, or you don't take American Express. Well, you can hope they have Visa, but if they don't, then you're not going to sell anything. So it's increased revenue from a new segment in the market, typically younger people who are more open to using new technologies. That's one reason. The other one is just a little bit more on the technical side, but some of the issues with credit cards, it's expensive, right? Pay 2, 3. I know some merchants in some verticals, they pay 8% to process a credit card. And this can be reduced by 90% using our technology. You have chargebacks, you have declines, you have many other problems, a lot of fraud with the credit cards, as we know, right? All that goes away. So it's just better technology. That's on the pay in side. On the payout side, the customers that use us, they had about 20% of all their payments that
Mhm.
they did cross border, all the money they send out, they had issues. They got support tickets in. And so they spend money on it's because it gets delayed. The bank is asking questions, all sorts of reasons, right? Maybe they provided the wrong bank account number. Many things can go wrong. And that reflects negatively on the merchant. And so by offering to pay out with stable coins, the
Mhm.
recipients get their money faster. It's a lot cheaper for them to pay it out, but that's not always the main driver. They reduce their support calls and so on. So anyone who's tried to do cross-border payments for our invoicing product and our payout product, um, they know the pain points on a day-to-day
Yeah.
basis, and we just reduce those pain points.
Amazing. Amazing. And just zooming out a little bit onto like the fintech space, like what trends are you seeing? So fintech and well, maybe just specifically with regards to payments, what trends, what major shifts would you say you're seeing in terms of just the industry?
Well, there are many, right? It's a huge industry. I mean, we're just covering one little corner of it, but I I do see one thing that's really think something that I care about is
Hmm.
the inclusion of the unbanked population in the world. If you take a really, you ask, let's take a high level picture, right? 40%
Hmm.
of the world's population, they don't have a bank account because they cannot get a bank account. If you think about that, what does that mean to not have a bank account? It means that you cannot do electronic payments.
Sure. Yeah.
So how are you going to pay for your phone bill? Let's say you have a little bit of maybe a little shack somewhere, and you have one light bulb, and you have to pay for the electricity. You have to physically walk somewhere to make that payment with cash. That creates all sorts of problems, in some countries, right? It takes time. You carry cash. If you are a woman, you have to go half an hour
Hmm.
with cash. I mean, it's not safe. It is not good to base yourself on cash, but they don't have a choice, right? Now,
Yeah.
with this new technology, suddenly you can make electronic payments because all of these people who are not banked, most of them, they have a mobile phone. Almost everyone in the world has a mobile phone, right? So now they can load cash on their phone and they can send it from one person to the other, one phone to the other outside the banking network, right? And so that is one, I would say, high level at least opportunity and trend that I see. So we talk about remittance, right? Just here in the
Hmm.
US, a lot of people move money back and forth between the US and, for example, Latin America, and they do
Hmm.
that through Western Union and all that. They pay what, 10, 15% to send
Hmm.
$1,000 back. Why? Because, I mean, some of the recipients may not even have a bank account. And so you have to go down to the 7-Eleven, send the money. So all of that is just has a fantastic opportunity and potential for that part of the population to enter into a more advanced economy and thereby.
Yeah, that makes sense. So a lot of emphasis there on payment remittance, eh?
Yeah.
And you see stable coins playing a vital role in that as well. And just taking that infrastructure to the next level and making it accessible and easier for folks. That
Yes.
totally makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So Peter, just zooming in a little bit back to you as a you're running this really changing the game when it comes to payment remittance, helping other businesses. What is your as a CEO, Fintech CEO, what's your day to day, your typical day look like for you? So, I don't know if you're a coffee or tea guy. You can start with that. But what's a typical day like? I'm sure it's not the same every day.
No, it's not the same. And one thing I always remind people of, it sounds very fancy to be a CEO of a company, right? But there's a big difference between being the CEO of Bank of America or a much bigger bank or much bigger company and being the CEO of a startup. It's two very different jobs, right? It
Yeah.
sounds it's the same title, but of course, my job is much more operational, tactical. It also has to be strategic. Obviously, you need to do both.
Mhm.
But yeah, my everyday is different from the CEO of Bank of America. But it has a lot to do with daily operation. Spend a lot of time on compliance. But yeah, it is meeting with the team, making sure that we deliver to our customers. That's the day-to-day operation. But then meeting with all the different teams, right? Are we generating the leads we should be generating? Are we closing the deals that we're generating? Are we developing the right products and trying to predict where's the market going? Where's the biggest need? Because one of the big challenges with a startup is one of the big benefits we have is that we can move much faster than the big companies. There are very few of the big companies who are really truly innovative and come up with new ideas and new ways of doing it and take advantage of that, right? That's why there are so many acquisitions in the space, not just in this space, but everywhere. It's like the smaller companies, even though we have less money and less people, we still can do it faster than the big companies. But it does require that we focus on the right things because we don't have a lot of people, a lot of money. So we focus on the right things, we can really get ahead. So that's what I spent a lot of time on, is making sure that the many ideas that we have about what we could develop and where we think the puck is going, that we get that right. Because
Yeah.
if we get that right and just hit that where the initial use case is, that will make a big difference. Like we talked about earlier, we started with one and then we developed multiple. If you
Hmm.
get the right one, and there are so many things we could do. This is going.
Hmm.
If you think about the early days of the internet or the mobile phone, which app should you start with? If you could only do one, it's like someone should have done Facebook 5 years earlier, right? But no one thought about it, right? So yeah, so that's what I'm spending time on, is also longer
Cool.
term strategy, and then of course always fundraising. In the startup,
Hmm.
need to raise funds all the time, and so to make sure that you can continue growth.
Interesting. Cool. Cool. So it almost sounds like you also wear quite a bit of hats, and you almost have to be like agile and nimble again to kind of to help with that speed as a startup, as you say, right? Which is quite interesting. So you mentioned compliance. Is that kind of like if you have to pick like two things where you spend the most of your time in, like what part of the business are you spending most of your time in? What would you say?
Well, spend right now I spend most of my time on sales and marketing, only because, I mean, as a CEO, I feel you always spend time on wherever there's always something that's not optimal in the business. And so sometimes it's the development team or whatever, right? So you just need to spend more time. Maybe someone just left and you have a
Yeah.
little bit of hole there, or something is not gelling the way it should. And but at the end of the day, in a startup, if you don't have the revenue, it doesn't really matter, right? So right now, I do spend a lot of time on on sales and marketing, but also on operations, because it is complicated to deal with all these payment procedures, and it's, yeah, it's just
Yeah. So
look at
tell me a little bit more about the operations part you're talking about. So is it revenue operation? Because when you talk about revenue operations, that's probably, around sales and marketing as well. But like, are you talking more in terms of like the actual delivery of the integration? Is that
yeah,
kind of what you're referring to? Yeah.
delivery, right? It is how many transactions are going through. Are they going through fast enough? I mean, people don't want to wait, right? So, for
Yeah.
example, you're used to paying with a credit card within 30 seconds, right? And then it goes through it, maybe even faster. It needs to be the same with us. So, do we do that? Do we do support? Do we respond to support tickets fast enough? And you have to think about it. They're used to all this just working perfectly, right? But
Mhm.
that's because the banks and the existing players have been there for 50 years, and they
Yeah.
built up processes over time. They built all of that over time, and we're building that in no time, right? So it's just a matter, it's just a function of time. It just takes time to build all these things, because at the end of the day, it's still just payments, and it needs to
Yeah.
work in many ways just like it used to do. It just needs to be faster, cheaper, and more secure.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Yeah, it makes sense. So if you had to narrow it down and you had one wish, and the wish was pick two things. You can't pick all of them. You have to pick just two things that you would improve on. What would those two things be
In our company,
in the business? Yeah, yeah.
well, there's the business, right? So overall, in the industry, what I would like is more clarity on regulation, right? So the problem we have had in the past 10 years, but at least in the crypto industry, is that, especially in the US, initially the government was not really excited about this technological progress. And I think it has to do a little bit of the special interest groups. I mean, we know the financial sector has a lot of influence in the government. And I think
Hmm.
the banks realized that, man, I mean, today, if you make an electronic payment with PayPal or Venmo or anything else, only way you can do an electronic payment today is through a bank. Everything goes through,
Yeah.
like everything, 100%. That's a nice control to have if you're the financial sector, right? And now suddenly you have a new technology that says it doesn't have to go through the banks. Okay, that's the threat to you, right? So I don't blame them for trying to slow down the progress, and they were successful to some extent until Europe passed some legislation, and it's one of the few times where Europe is actually ahead from a regulatory perspective. And we saw companies leave the US,
Yeah.
and just because there was not clarity. And the problem was, when there's no clarity, how do you know you're compliant? How do you know you're legal? Right? And people don't want to take. I mean, I don't want to go to jail for running a business. So,
Hmm.
so to answer your question, the current progress that they're passing, they've just passed the stablecoin bill, and they're passing laws, right? And what it
The
means is
Genius Act is one of them, right? Yeah.
exactly right. And so it is now, the rules have been defined. This is what you
Hmm.
can do. This is what you're not allowed to do. And here's how to do it, right? And now we know we can follow it. And so we know if we do X, Y, and Z, we're in
Hmm.
compliance. This is what has happened in the financial industry for decades, right? I mean, banks know they have to report your interest in your checking account to the IRS. Well, that's just because someone passed the law. They know that the banks have to check deposits over $10,000 if it comes in from outside. I mean, it's just because the laws have been passed, and now they can execute on, and now we're starting to be able to do the same. And that is very, very helpful.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. There's a lot of clarity in traditional finance, and that's really been missing for so many years. And when it
I
comes
mean,
to
I'll give you an
yeah,
example, and I
mm,
don't know why this is. Well, I think I do know why it is, but I just read an article here in the Bay Area. We have all these self-driving Waymos. They're 800 in San Francisco. They're everywhere, right?
seeing those. Yeah, yeah.
And now they expanded outside of San Francisco. And I read an article the other day that one of these Waymos, allegedly, I don't know if it's true or not, but it probably is. It said they made an illegal U-turn, and
Mm.
so the police stops the Waymo. Right, there's no driver. But who do I send the
The
fine?
ticket.
And of course, what makes sense is send it to Google, because
Mm.
it's there. Well, there's no law that says if there's no driver in the car, who to send it to, right? What
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
understand is 4 or 5 years ago, the authorities gave Google the permission to drive driverless
To
cars. And
test, yeah.
and what I don't understand is why didn't they pass those kind of laws that say what could possibly happen here? It doesn't take a genius to realize that one of these cars is going to break the law somehow, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and so, and that's why I don't understand why the government, when they see new technology, when they approve it, that they don't pass the law. We had the same thing with Uber, right? In the beginning, the Uber drivers could drive into the airport and pick up passengers without paying the airport fee, and and that was not fair to the taxis. And then a year later, they changed the law. So regulation just takes a long time. That's
yeah,
because it stifles innovation. It slows down the rollout of new technology, which is what makes us more competitive. We're trying to compete with China and everyone else, and we have the capacity in this country. We've shown it that
mhm,
we're good at adopting new technology, but we need the government to work with us so that
yeah,
it can be done in a safe, legal way, and that we don't get all these people, because when there's not clarity, that
yeah,
attracts the criminals, and that's not good for
mm,
us who are trying to build a business. We're trying to build technology and solutions that benefit 98% of the population, and it's
mhm,
unfortunate that 2% criminals are ruining it for the rest of us.
yeah. Speaking about business, so for Rocket Fuel, what would you say is your sort of strategic vision for the next 6 to 12 months?
Well, it's really, the vision is to continue to identify and build new use cases
Mm,
for all sorts of different payments. And I mentioned three or four of them early on, right? So what we want to do is have a complete and integrated suite of products, kind of like with Microsoft or
yeah,
Oracle, right? Because we find that our customers, they don't want to buy pay-in solution from company A and this and that. So we
yeah,
want to create an integrated suite. That's one thing. So continue to broaden our solution, right? So that we
mhm,
cover as many areas and solve as many problems for our customers as possible. That's one thing that we want to do strategically. And then we want to roll that out to the whole world. And we want to help. I mean, we're just a small player, but the biggest inhibitor to adopting or to implementing this stuff and adopting any new technology is people. People
yeah,
that it takes time for, I mean, here I am in Silicon Valley, and most people are open to new ways of doing it. But when I go back
mhm.
to my family and my mom and my sister, they're like, I don't know. I remember when we got the ATM card and my mom said, I don't know about that. I still go into the bank and withdraw money. It
Mhm,
took, I don't know, 5, 10 years, right? So
yeah.
need to make people aware of the new possibilities and comfortable with the new technologies.
Yeah, that's huge. Adoption and awareness, like that's what drives, this, right? And also you also get that feedback loop because you learn from more people using it, like the different demographic of people that use it, and you probably never thought about it. Okay. So, and you are already thinking about how to get there, right? Because that's your vision. Like you're thinking about how you can really help with increasing adoption. Obviously, your suite of products, that's more within your control as well, right?
Yeah.
You're thinking of new ideas. That's great. Awesome. Peter, thank you very much. These were really nice for sharing your experiences and your ideas there around the market trends. Would you say any, just to wrap things up a little bit, any advice for say early stage fintech founders who are just getting in the payment space, or even businesses that are evaluating payment solutions as well? Any advice for either of those two kind of folks?
Well, I would say to founders who are getting into this space, it is a great space to get into. And here's why. The market is huge, right? Fintech, if you look at the financial sector, all the banks, but not just banks, I mean, it is just massive, right? Because we're talking about money, and money is like, think about everything that's being purchased and between businesses every single day. It is trillions of dollars, right? Worldwide. So the market is huge, which is what you want as an entrepreneur. You want a big market. The next thing you want to find out is, are there a lot of problems that you can solve? And
Mhm.
there are a lot of problems in the financial sector. Why? Because it is run by large, established, respected, but also old fashioned, a little slow companies. And so, as an entrepreneur, that is the opportunity, right? If you have a big market and you have a lot of problems and you have existing players that are not as agile to move. That gives you the opportunity. And the last thing you need is the technology that allows you to change things and address the problems. And that is what's here. I mean, we've had credit cards for a long time. Credit cards were, and that's just one use case, right? That's on the consumer side. But we've had credit cards for 50 years. They were invented before the internet. No wonder they're not secure. No wonder why we had to add a chip and a CVC code and a magnetic stripe. It's not because they wanted to, it's because there was so much fraud and still is fraud, right? Um, yeah. So I would say but now you have the technology that allows you to change that. It was the same thing with the taxi industry. The way it worked until 10, 15 years ago was with the dispatcher that you call into. It's been working like that for 100 years. Why? Because there was not the technology that allowed you to change it. The mobile phone with GPS came in, and then Uber
Mhm.
changed that. So you need the big market, you need lots of problems, you need slow incumbents, and then you need technology. So that is what we have in the fintech sector. So I would say go for it. There's so much opportunity. And for the merchants out there, I would just say there's hope, right? You spend a lot of money on payments without knowing it. It's not just accepting payment from consumers, it is paying your employees, it is paying your invoices, is every time money is moved between businesses,
Mhm.
government, and consumers, there is money, it costs money, and there's risk and all of that. And one thing I would say is don't underestimate it. It is happening right now. People, we see it, large companies, and you can just see the big corporations, PayPal, Merrill Lynch, they're all jumping in this full speed. It is happening now. So do not sit and wait because your competitors are doing it. And it's not that hard.
Yeah.
It's just another currency that you need to add to your balance sheet. And it'll just be so much easier, faster, better, more secure.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you, Peter. Thanks for being on the show as well. This is great.
Well, thank you. And I wish you all the best of luck in your new show. I think it sounds like you're hitting it right on. So good luck with your show and your podcast.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
Bye bye.